PC remains the most varied, customizable, and potentially powerful way to play. So, as we wrap out 2022, it's time to look ahead to next year and beyond at the bright future of PC games and go through some of the most anticipated games coming. Avowed looks to be the first big RPG from Obsidian under the Xbox Game Studios umbrella, but all we know so far comes from the short teaser trailer shown off during the Xbox showcase from July 2020, which revealed the game as a new first-person fantasy RPG set in the Pillars of Eternity universe. Resident Evil 4 was a medium-defining piece of work that influenced all that came after it, so marrying it with the hugely successful style of the recent RE2 and RE3 remakes has us pumped that this remake might continue Resident Evil's domination as one of the best of gaming's horror franchises. Many of us are excited for the follow-up to Respawn's Dark Souls-like Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, which many consider to be the best Star Wars story made since Disney acquired the franchise, Star Wars Andor notwithstanding. Continuing the story of Cal Kestis as he takes on the Empire as well as his trauma left over from the Clone Wars, Survivor might be the game to bring balance to the Force. It's been a long while since we heard from BioShock creator Ken Levine, but he finally unveiled his latest game with a bang at the Game Awards 2022. Like BioShock, Judas is a narrative first-person shooter that takes place on a disintegrating starship, and seems to be about making or breaking alliances as you try to escape. We don't know much more than that, but we're certainly excited given its pedigree. Hades 2. While we don't know much about the much anticipated sequel to the seminal roguelike experience and one of the best games of 2020, it's definitely coming in early access in 2023, and that's worthy enough of it jumping on our list. The game is Supergiant's first sequel, and it made a big pop when it had its trailer released at the Game Awards, and it's certainly a sequel that brings a lot of expectations that we're really not too worried that it'll be able to meet. The Last of Us Part 1. A remake of one of the best games on PlayStation is making its way to the PC. It arrives just in time for anyone who might become a new fan of the franchise as a result of the upcoming HBO adaptation that we're all excited for. The Last of Us Part 1 will be coming to PC on March 3rd, 2023. Even if you're a fan of the original game, the remake brings in a host of great updates like more accessibility options and some stunning graphical upgrades that bring it up to par with even the best of its more modern competitors. Not to mention, it still provides one of the most heart-wrenching and thought-provoking stories in gaming. Speaking of PlayStation exclusives making their way to PC, Returnal will also be looping back to the new platform. Returnal was easily one of the most surreal yet compelling action horror experiences of 2021, and its unique narrative helped elevate it to something truly special that you don't want to miss. Kerbal Space Program was memorable for its complex physics that helped show a whole new generation how going into space is actually extremely hard. Countless Kerbals have been lost in an attempt to construct a perfect rocket, and the sequel looks to be even more ambitious with a focus on interstellar travel. You'll be able to cross galaxies, habitate planets, make colonies, and play with fellow Kerbal enthusiasts in multiplayer. While Activision Blizzard fans are definitely wary of Diablo 4 given the over-monetization of 2022's Diablo Immortal, there is reason to be excited for a proper follow-up to the franchise, as players take on the new villain Lilith, who is working to concentrate her power. Diablo 4 really feels like it's a true hybrid of the best of Diablo 2 and Diablo 3, from the strategic healing system to the more dynamic dodge ability. After a long wait, Diablo 4 seems to be everything fans have been hoping for. You'd be forgiven for forgetting that at one point, Perfect Dark was one of the most well-known and respected names in video games, given that it's been mostly ignored since its mediocre Xbox 360 launch title. But this reboot, developed by the Initiative alongside Crystal Dynamics, hopes to again prove that Perfect Dark can be relevant to the new, more modern, mature industry. Despite us wanting it for forever, all we know about The Elder Scrolls 6 is that it's real and it's being worked on. We got a short teaser trailer with a title in 2018 and that's about it. So here we are, patiently waiting. Maybe we'll get another Skyrim to remaster for new-gen consoles and PC in the meantime. But speaking of Bethesda and RPGs, one of the most anticipated games right now is Starfield, Bethesda's sci-fi space-themed take on the studio's RPG style. Todd Howard has certainly been ambitious with this project, with thousands of planets promised and a detailed world. There's been a trickle of dev blogs if you're interested in the development of factions, companions, and major new locations like New Atlantis, Neon, and Aquila. And while fans are a bit wary after Fallout 76 and even massive universe games like No Man's Sky at launch, we'll have to see if Starfield will measure up when it releases in 2023. That's right, a new Mass Effect is coming, and hopefully it's been calibrated just perfectly. Announced at the Game Awards 2020, the upcoming entry in the fan-favorite series still seems to be early in development, with BioWare at the helm. While the franchise has a lot to prove after Andromeda, we're ready for BioWare to prove why Mass Effect is our favorite space opera on the Citadel. The teaser had nods to the Geth, Liara, and Reapers, but it's unclear which of Mass Effect 3's endings, if any, will become canon to tie into this new adventure. Speaking of BioWare and redemption stories, its other big franchise, Dragon Age, is also ready for a revival with Dreadwolf. Coming off of Netflix's animated adaptation of the franchise, not much is known about this game other than it being a sequel to the well-received but anticlimactic Inquisition, meaning that like Mass Effect, BioWare has to bring its A-game to this entry. Forspoken looks to be a fun twist on the narrative-driven RPG, combining the free-flowing traversal of Marvel's Spider-Man with a unique fantasy twist, with the main character being an average girl from our world tossed into a world filled with dragons and supernatural abilities. Here's hoping that Forspoken manages to execute off its huge ambition. There's very little we know about the new Fable right now, but at least we know it's real. Its reveal concluded the Xbox showcase back in July 2020, and it was confirmed that developer Playground Games is behind the project. It's exciting to think about what Fable could be in a new generation. One of a spat of games centered around supernatural multiplayer heroes taking on hordes of monsters, Redfall catches our attention based heavily on the pedigree. Arcane Studios, the developer behind Dishonored, Prey, and Deathloop, certainly knows how to make a game that relishes in granting you superpowers. So having those skills put towards a cooperative game makes this one to watch. Despite being delayed by the invasion of Ukraine, S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2 still plans to be an ambitious step forward for the series. Much like the rest of the franchise, S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2 takes place in the Nuclear Exclusion Zone, or the Zone, in radiated Chornobyl, but supernatural elements lurk about to create a horror-like atmosphere. It's said to have one of the biggest open worlds ever in gaming, which sounds pretty daunting for the first-person action franchise, but we're definitely excited to see if they can deliver. Senua's Saga Hellblade 2 continues the harrowing journey of the titular protagonist that started in Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice. The first game was an amazing exploration of mental health using Norse mythology, and we're excited to see what Ninja Theory's sequel can bring with its expanded scope. Suicide Squad: Kill the Justice League. After the disappointing Gotham Knights failed to reignite the dormant DC Comics video game fandom, Rocksteady is hoping that it can bring it back with its return to the Arkham universe with a take on the anti-hero troupe, the Suicide Squad. While it's certainly not what we expected from the house that Batman built, it might just be with the Doctor turned Harley Quinn themed supervillain ordered. And with the announcement that this game will feature Kevin Conroy's last performance as the Batman, it's sure to tug at the heartstrings. System Shock was a major inspiration for later hits like BioShock, and after a successful Kickstarter campaign, Night Dive Studios is bringing it back. What originally began as a remaster has morphed into a full-on reboot. However, sadly, Night Dive has run into development troubles related to the pandemic and other factors, but the game is said to be coming in 2022. After proving its RPG mettle with the Divinity Original Sin games, Larian Studios is making a true and proper sequel to the series that inspired it. Baldur's Gate 3 follows the events of Shadows of Aim and takes notes from both the classic Baldur's Gate games and the Divinity franchise. An early access version was released in 2020, and despite some rough spots, it showed a great deal of promise, and the full release is slated for 2023. The World War II real-time strategy series Company of Heroes is coming back after a long hiatus. This time, the game will focus on the Italian and North African theaters of war and includes new features like a tactical pause that allows you to queue up commands and increase destructibility. Despite some controversy over its lack of diversity, fans are still excited for Final Fantasy XVI, the next mainline entry in the famous franchise. Here, players will enter Valisthea, a world divided into 3 factions, yet given peace and prosperity thanks to the Mother Crystals. It looks to be an interesting reintroduction to the Final Fantasy franchise for new fans, and something that will make old fans extremely excited. While fans are looking to the future of Final Fantasy, they will also be getting a dose of the past, as the follow-up to the well-regarded Final Fantasy VII Remake comes out in the near future, giving us the next part of the story in the seminal classic. Despite seeming to have died years ago, Dead Island 2 was finally reanimated in February 2022 with its Gamescom reveal trailer, leaving us excited that the series can still take a bite out of its competition, Dying Light. Dambuster Studios seems to be well aware of the expectations it has on its shoulders and looks to bring an exciting open world LA and San Francisco to its new combat mechanics and rage systems like zombie powers. Atomic Heart is a game that wears its influences of BioShock, Metro, Stalker, and Nier Automata on its sleeve, and that's not a bad thing. The game, a first-person shooter set in an alternate Soviet Union 1955, looks to be an exciting political action game, and we're ready for it. And that's our picks for the most anticipated PC games coming in 2023 and beyond. But despite our huge list, we almost certainly missed something that you're